We continue our reading of God's Dream for You, The Chosen, a morning devotional by author Dwight K. Nelson. Today's reading, October 12. Repairers of the Breach, Part 2. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore I command you to be open-handed toward those of your people who are poor and needy in your land. Deuteronomy 15:11. I knocked on their basement apartment door. I'd heard that the young couple, members of our congregation, and students at the university were experiencing some financial difficulties. And while such stories are hardly unique in a community of young, penniless scholars in training, I decided I had better check this one out. It was not long before Christmas. The young husband invited me in. Sitting there in that nearly bare apartment, the three of us fell into conversation. At some point in our visit, I asked how things were going financially for them. After a momentary glance at each other, the young man stood up and walked to their refrigerator and opened it. He pointed to a half-empty tub of margarine and a jar of corn kernels. This is what we've been living on lately. They were subsisting on popcorn. How did Jesus put it? For the poor you have with you always. John 12:8. It is a reminder that while the inner cities of the world's great urban centers are thronged with the penniless and the impoverished, God's mobilization of the chosen to minister to the poor is not at the expense of the poor among us. In fact, in a chapter entitled God's Care for the Poor, Ellen White observes there is nothing after their recognition of the claims of God that more distinguishes the laws given by Moses than the liberal, tender, and hospitable spirit enjoined toward the poor. Although God had promised greatly to bless his people, it was not his design that poverty should be wholly unknown among them. He declared that the poor should never cease out of the land. There would ever be those among his people who would call into existence their sympathy, tenderness, and benevolence. Then, as now, persons were subject to misfortune, sickness, and loss of property. Yet so long as they followed the instruction given by God, there were no beggars among them, neither any who suffered for food. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 530 and 531. Quote, the poor you have with you always, end quote. Given that reality, could it be that the poor are our golden opportunity to exercise the golden rule? If the tables were turned and your fortunes reversed, how would you want the poor man, the poor woman, that poor child to treat you? If they had all your money and all your time, how would you want them to treat you in your need? This concludes our reading today of God's Dream for You, The Chosen.